Alrighty, good afternoon. The VMware User Group, or VMUG, is an independent, global, customer-led organization created to maximize members' use of VMware and partner solutions through knowledge, sharing, training, collaboration, and events. Get connected to a local VMUG community near you at vmug.com. Please use the Q&A function rather than the general chat. This just makes things a lot smoother on our end for answering questions. And if we want to follow up with you, we'll have your email to do so. We'll answer these questions live, and you can find the Q&A at the bottom of your screen. And just in case you're wondering, this session is being recorded. The recording will be distributed in a wrap-up email after the webcast. It will be posted on YouTube. So if you're wondering if you'll have access to these slides afterward, rest assured we will be sharing this afterward. And without further ado, I'll kick things over to Christopher.
Hello and welcome. That's how I typically kick off a nice introduction. We're going to figure out, can we master the power of screen sharing? Did it work? I think it worked. Someone's got to tell me though. You gotta make sure that it worked, in fact.
We can
And
see it.
I love it. I love everything about that. So welcome to part 1 of 4, but unleashing the power of VCF. What's real? What's new, or not even necessarily new, and what comes next. So we're going to have a fun blast of a time. Some of you may know me, and some of you may be new to me. My name is Christopher Kusek. I'm a principal architect here at Broadcom, VMware. Been around the block. Some of you may have read some of my 17 books on VMware. Some of you may know me in the vExpert community. Some of you may be vExperts. Some of you may be interested in the vExpert program. Hey, applications open up again in the December timeframe, and I'm rocking this fresh off the truck from Explore, the vExpert bomber jacket. So, with no further ado, let's get started into things. We're going to make sure that slides work. Here we go. All right. We're going to rock through an agenda. And I've got an amazing series of panelists ready to take your questions and answers, and I'll occasionally call on them as well. So I appreciate and enjoy that. We're going to get an overview of VCF, right? We're going to talk about benefit, function, use cases, stuff like that. Talk a little bit about true visibility. And the key part is everything we're talking about in those first 2 parts, that's something that exists today. That's not something about, oh, I've got to do stuff. I need to go into the future. That's stuff that you're entitled to and supported to in most cases, be able to do today without having to do 9. And then we talk about the future, I mean the present of VCF, because, as you guys know, June 17th is when VCF 9 launched. And we go to the bottom line and kind of roll through some stuff. Definitely don't hesitate to hammer away at that Q&A. I'll try to watch it, but I'll also be talking, so I can't watch it nearly as well as the rest of my team. Amazing team that are out there. And I see Darius saying hello in the Q&A. I love it. So we're going to talk about VCF benefits and use cases. Let's get started there. So you may be saying like, well, what? This is VCF, right? I know about this. And that's the best part, right? For many of you, you may have an entitlement to VCF today. You may have bought recently. You may be buying in the near future. So I always like to highlight this. This is not anything, quote, new, but this is something that I have this conversation probably 4 or 5 times a week. And I'll often highlight actually, let me go turn to my little highlights. Where's my annotation? I often highlight it in this particular way to say, I'm certain whether you're entitled to VCF or not, this is what you're running, right? You're running vCenter, you're running ESX, right? It's probably 7. Hopefully you're migrating off of that, because that 7 ends on October 2nd, right? That is what, less than 30 days away. But you're running vCenter, you're running vSphere, and then maybe in many cases you run ops, possibly some logs, right? That's kind of the general world. There may be some other pieces of here that you don't necessarily know too much about, you haven't necessarily deployed, you may have some objections, even like, oh, I already have a different kind of storage, so I don't want to do that, or oh, REOps for networks, I'm not too familiar with that. Oh, that's for my network team, which we're going to talk about. We're going to touch on every single one of these pieces here. And automation, I've got the masters of automation with us to be able to talk about some of those pieces as well. Not nearly as much time as you might want, but that's what the second and third webinars are going to be around. All right, so we kind of roll through this. This is what's in VCF. This is what's in VCF today. VCF today, as in not 9, refers to 5.2 and earlier. And these are all things that you're able to take advantage of and are capabilities inside 5.2. But that said, let's roll into some of the meat of this, right? So the VMware cloud management platform, right? That's ops, that's login site, that's ops for networks. You may often hear us use these terms, and that's automation. You may hear us use these terms that they may feel old school to you. Like we may call ops VROps or VCF ops, right? We may call login site Verly or just login site. Most likely call login site. I call login site beta because I'm old school. But we will talk about ops for networks, often called Verny. You know, we may say these things interchangeably. And VCF automation, VRA, or if you want to go old school, VCAC or something like that. But what I always liked about this is it's that cloud management platform for any VM, any container, irrespective of where I'm running that VMware infrastructure. And I'll emphasize what that means a little bit later. But we kind of get into this. This is, hey, what are some of the use cases of VCF, right? It's a private cloud transformation, right? It's that modern app modernization, AI analytics. Again, we'll dig deeper in these things. Managing risk and cybersecurity, that's a very special one. We kind of get into when it comes to the baseline of a secure platform, a sovereign and secure platform, rather than, hey, I need to load something extra on top of that, which you can and you're entitled to, but just taking advantage of the capabilities in the box are really powerful. And then sustainable IT is a piece of that. Always a fan of this slide. I mean, its slide has definitely evolved and changed as time goes on as we move into 9. But I always like this kind of a, hey, if I had a slide that had like just 1 or 2 use cases, I guess literally 2 use cases for every one of these pieces, it would give me a good sense of how I can articulate some of those things. But that said, and Jason will absolutely hit on that question about private AI a little bit later, but absolutely, I appreciate the question here. Let's talk about ops for a second here. So some of you may be running ops today. Some of you may be entitled to ops and not running it. So one of the key things that if you're deploying and you're running ops today, and what the best part is, there's us you can talk to, there's resources, there's hands-on labs, there's, guides, there's big instruction stuff, there's blogs, my blogs, there's YouTube videos, my YouTube videos, many of our others. But what's nice about this is if you're not doing all these stuff, many of us were happy to do workshops with you as well as if you got ops deployed today, you've been using it for a decade, or you're going to deploy it today immediately, use it for capacity planning and shortfalls, right? Using it for reclamation of capacity and automating cost savings. Those are 2 huge things. Infrastructure workload planning, I absolutely love that. At one time, I was VMware's world's largest customer. I was the world's largest user of VROps. And I'll tell you, I did all these things. I mean, we had millions of virtual machines, and ops made the difference between making us and breaking us. Back in the day, I didn't necessarily have a lot of showback, chargeback stuff. Cool part. This one, what we're showing here, and the key part, everything we're showing here is relevant to 8.18 and prior. Also relevant to 9 as we talk about it, but everything we're talking about is stuff that you're able to do today without having to make any extra change, investment, or something like that. So showback and chargeback on TCO has gotten better version after version after version. It's way better in 8.18 and significantly and further better in 9. So that's kind of a nice piece on that is these 4 little parts there. Amazing. These 3, full stack visibility, which we get into the full stack area. Awesome. AI, troubleshooting remediation, we'll talk about in 2 slides. Intent driven performance optimization. These are all things that you can do. You should be able to do. Yes, the recording will be available at the event, Gabriel. Absolutely. You like how I'm reading the Q&A live? I can't read the chat as much as I want to, but I am able to see the Q&A. Compliance and best practices is better and has gotten better in ways you can improve it, and sustainability and some really good power there. But let's talk about a little AI. So it says AI self-driving engine right here at the bottom, right? And you see all these really cool things. Correlation, troubleshooting, root cause, building yourself an RCA, self-healing and orchestration, which is some really amazing stuff that I will have John talk about later. Not right now, John. I'll have John talk about later. Some amazing stuff there. But here's what's really cool about this. When we say AI, we don't mean like instantiation of OpenAI where you generate and use tokens and blah, 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 right? We're talking about in the box AI, machine learning heuristics and AI type of capabilities based upon what you're doing operationally in there. So nothing's exposed, No PII, no PIH for healthcare, no exposure of any of your information going out to somewhere else in order to use it for data correlation and stuff along those lines, as far as the AI power inside the box of VCF operations or VROPs, right? Super powerful. And I've been a fan of the continued growth and investment of this operationally, and it just continues to get better. That's kind of the really nice stuff there. So useful for all these capabilities and then some. A little bit about automation, right? This is the automation that we've known and loved, and we've gone through that journey from VCAC to where we are today, from the 7 to the 8, right? So this is all stuff that you can do and you should do inside of the 8.18 world, right? So network automation, IT automation, self-service multi-cloud, DevOps, Kubernetes, all that stuff is stuff you're able to do today. When we roll into 9, that's when I'm going to make John and Jack do some talking, because we take it up a significant level. But we'll talk about that as we get into the 9 section here. A little extra pieces on there, pipelines. You guys may have seen that Argo CD reference, but that's the fun part. This something you get at this moment, right? Hey, I can automate for what I call day 0 operations, meaning, or more like a day -1 to 0, to say, hey, I'd like to deploy a virtual machine or a container, right? That's my initial part. I don't have something. It does not exist at the moment. I would like it to exist. So I'll use a service catalog through here, or publish through ServiceNow or something like that, that then instantiates this. It automates this and orchestrates underneath the covers to go and do the thing. That's kind of a capability that's in here. And then there's a day 2 policy action type function. I want someone to be able to go and perform a series of prescribed actions, yada, yada. Like a lot of power that you can kind of do in that. That stuff you have in there. But when it comes to automation of orchestration functions, that's when I'll make John do some extra talking that John did not was aware I was going to make him talk about that later. But we'll get to that, because again, everything we're talking about, something you're able to do today. This is a huge one. This is one of my favorite ones. Ops for logs. I always describe in this way. So if any one of you, because I do this, but one-on-one with people so they can ask questions like live back, like deep. But I'll ask you this. Hey, you got logs deployed? Oh, I love it. Do you have one node, 3 nodes, or 18 nodes deployed? And what that tells me is if you have 1 or 3 nodes, it's like I got 1 and I'm pulling something that's got a V in its name, right? vSphere, vCenter, NSX, right? Those are the one. That's the one, and 3 is 1, but like redundancy. 18 says, yo, dog, I'm pulling logs from my UCS. I'm pulling my Windows event logs. I'm pulling all this stuff that today I have Splunk pulling it. I've got an Elk stack. I'm throwing over into Cribble. I got Kiwi syslog. Like whatever happened, I've got this stuff fed onto a dot matrix printer, right? That's a real thing. That's the world of all these pieces. But typically what you find functionally in operations is when you're doing that is if it's being fed off into Splunk or Exabeam or any of these other places, it's being fed off there, but you don't get operational visibility into it. You're collecting data and possibly at great expense, but you're not often able to do anything with it. But by using this, hey, we can have ops logs collect the data from all of the thing, anything with a syslog, a fluency handler, an agent collector, whatever it happens to be. I can feed all that data over into here and then take the stuff I actually need to maintain for compliance, regulatory governance, blah, 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 and actually forward that off into that other environment, which saves you money off in those environments because Cribble and Splunk are going to cost you by the byte as it goes in. So I'll be like, you know what? I don't need to forward my SCSI logs over there for compliance reasons, but I do need those for troubleshooting reasons for in a 24/48 or 2-week period, depending on how much capacity you allocate for this. So a really powerful thing. Again, that's on the truck. That's something you've been able to do for 10 years now. So it's something you're able to do more so of. Okay. This is Vernie. This is Ops for Networks. This is one of my favorite things. So if you say, oh, I want to use Vernie, but my network team's not interested. I don't. All right. Vernie, especially for any of you, VMware admins out there, connect it to your vCenters. If you have VCF, you're entitled to. Connect it to your vCenters. Useful for troubleshooting virtual machines. Useful for troubleshooting storage. Way powerful for troubleshooting vSAN. And then if so that's where I'm analyzing IP fix data. If I've got NetFlow data, here, hands down, my favorite use case. It is the most shadow use case I've run into, and I run this all the time. Actually, 2 different ones. One will connect it into the switch infrastructure. It's pulling in NetFlow data, and I will go to ops. I go, hey VROP, show me all the operating systems of my virtual machine. And it goes in, talks to vCenter, and pulls all your operating systems. Hey, I got server 2025. I got this Ubuntu version. I got all that stuff, right? It's got all the information about every virtual machine you have. That's what vCenter and its VROP's relationship is. I go inside of Vernie here. I said, hey Vernie, hey Ops for Networks, show me all my operating systems. And then it's like, you got some Windows 95 out here. You got some Windows XP. I'm like, I don't have VMs running 95 or XP. And it's like, oh, no, those aren't VMs. Those are physical servers. Because Ops for Networks, by the power of NetFlow data, knows about everything that's physical. Whereas VROPS only knows about things that are virtual because it's a virtual VCF operations visibility, whereas this is about network visibility. So between being able to identify errant operating systems, many of which you may not know about, then that's terrifying. The second one is one of my favorite things because it's all query based, right? The architecture on this. I go in there like, hey, show me all RDP traffic going to and from China and my domain controllers. And in 100, this has sadly happened more than a dozen times. In 100% of those cases, it was China or Russia is typically that, or Ukraine during a period there. It would always be like, hey, this demo is over and we need to get on the phone with security. And I support that. I hope that doesn't happen to you, but this is a powerful way to go and identify that, especially because you're entitled to it. So it's a powerful thing. Once you have VCF, you're able to do this. This is something I used to do extra, something I used to do separately back in the day when this is something we sold separately. So batteries included, right? So a lot of power inside here. HCX, oh my God. Migration, networking. We're not going to go too deep on this, but this is a super powerful asset for your infrastructure, especially cloud to cloud, whether those are VMware clouds or non-VMware clouds. A lot of power and juice around this. Just so much jazz. And when it comes to NSX, which I don't even include in these sections, I'll get into that when we get into 9 because there's some really exciting stuff I talk about there. vSAN, okay. This is like, hey, Christopher, this is a marketing slide. It is and it isn't, right? Because it's all backed by total economic impact studies with Forrester and blah, blah, blah. But you're saying that sounds like marketing words to me. I'm like, okay, that's fair. All right. But this one is less marketing and more real cool jazz around ESA, right? So the express storage architecture, which is head and shoulders above the old OSA, the original storage architecture, right? So everything you're seeing on this slide is what's available in 8, right? This is not even 9. I don't have to go and adopt 9 to do these things. Do I get better stuff out of 9? Absolutely. I got global dedupe, which we'll talk about when we get to the 9 stuff, but so much power, so much juice inside of here. And I was like this. Yeah, but for what apps? Like, well, all the apps. Like, yeah, but what about my yeah, no, that app's supported. Yeah, well, yep, no, that app's included as well. So it's just a lot of power for any app, any workload, any function inside the environment. So it's just a lot of power inside of vSAN. But and I'll jump the shark a little bit. Hey, I want to do VCF, but you're making me deploy vSAN. No. 5.2, yes. If you deploy 5.2 today, I'm making you use on vSAN. It's not a question. 9, do whatever you want, man. I want you to run vSAN because look at all this stuff. It's amazing. But I got Pure Storage. I love it, man. You're running NetApp? Sweet. I'm running Pure with vVols. Okay, I'll check the stuff. We deprecate vVols. But aside from that, hey, you've got a lot of functionality and flexibility there, but I'm not forcing you to do anything. Because it's kind of that cool. Hey, it's IaaS. Hopefully I'm not too loud. Hey, I got a great IaaS platform, all the things, and I've got some advanced services over the top, which we kind of highlight here, but we dig a little deeper later. So three pieces I tend to highlight on here. Used before, private AI. There was a question, hey, isn't private AI Foundation now included in VCF because that was said on the stage at Explore a couple weeks ago? Yes. So that's why I'll talk about it later. But the real big ones, I want to do deep advanced security through vDefend or the old DFW. Yes, that's still a separate add-on type of thing that I encourage, but it's a separate thing. Data services like, not the tons of data services, but data service manager for database as a service, absolutely. Disaster recovery through like live recovery, like the SRM, but like more powerful stuff. Yeah, we're going to talk about that as some of the advanced feature stuff in 9 there as well. So just a lot of power. And then extra pieces, Avi and what have you. Just a lot of juice that happens speed there, right? So this is, again, with what I've been talking about, stuff you're able to do today fully operationally. It often looks like this is stairs, but the reality is these things can be done in tandem. But if you are running naked vSphere or vSphere with just ops deployed, you should be able to be doing these few pieces here. And then as you start to adopt some of the constructs of VCF, the SDC manager, the fleet manager, the lifecycle type functionalities, you start to gain some more of these efficiencies. And then you're like, all right, well, I can do automation and do some more of these pieces, right? Hey, if I do so you'll say reduce storage TCO. I call that out. I mean, I've worked at multiple storage companies in the past, right? And the key call I make on here is storage is typically 80% of your infrastructure spend, and it's typically in a bucket that's outside of the normal refresh schedules of all things. So the key on there is, yeah, I mean, if you adopt vSAN or more efficient storage architecture, you're typically gonna get some savings, and that's kind of a key. So this is a big thing, and savings is in two ways. There is the cost of the infra, and then there's also reducing the cost of the infra by diminishing some of these things through efficiencies over here. And then virtualizing the network, and we'll talk about some power there around NSX here in a bit. But I'm going to take a drink, and we're going to roll to the true visibility of your infrastructure for a second. That was a lot of words, my lord. 22 minutes, no drink. All right. Again, everything we're talking about, something you're able to do at this very second. If you have ops deployed, you can do all this right now. This is the kind of ops. Hey, I've got a dashboard that shows me like all my infrastructure, all my vCenters, all my VMs, all my containers, all that kind of power right there. I'm like, absolutely. But we'll dig a little deeper on that. I love this image. Not that I have not included this in multiple of my books, but still, I love this image because if you deploy VROPS without, if you know, VCF operations, if you deploy it without loading a single management pack or an integration, this is the world you live in. This is also similar to the world you have with just naked vSphere, which is kind of through the lens of, hey, my virtual machine can see the data store I sit on, right? Call it data store 1, right? I can see my host, call it ESXi 1, right? That's kind of the world. And then it's like, oh, what about if something happens to my hardware? Right, you guys know SMART, right? SMART, right? If there's a problem that's running at the hardware level and there's some type of issue, eventually when it exceeds a certain threshold of errors or conditions, it might communicate that up to the hardware piece of itself, which then can roll up to vCenter, right? That's kind of the power of how it goes. And then if it rolls to vCenter where it's visible in this host part, then maybe I'll get that data rolled into ops. That's kind of the world that we live in operationally. Through connection with these integration management packs and stuff like that, I could be like, yo, my host, ESX1, is actually sitting on blade 1 that's sitting inside a chassis 1. And inside a chassis 1, there's fan 1, 2, 3. And I'm actually having a problem with fan 1 inside that system, which I would have zero visibility about. Call the UCS system, call the, Lenovo or Perliant or whatever happens to be. Suddenly, through management packs of like some of these, fun little management packs, I have visibility into those deeper underlying metrics, which provides that true visibility of it. Some of you may remember the old Blue Medora true visibility suite stuff. All of that, okay. All of that, with the exception of the items that have been deprecated, which you may notice from like last November and in June, a number of these were deprecated. But these are many of those management packs that have been rolled into it. And then in 8, we had the management pack builder, which was a separate extension build thing that you would actually build and load in the environment. But explicitly in 9, management pack builders fully load into the environment as well. To make it easier for you to go and build out those connections, integrations, and stuff like that. So there's a lot of really nice pieces that happen to exist inside here. Again, all this stuff you're able to do in an 8 world today, you're able to do in a 9 world tomorrow. Networking devices is actually one of my favorite shadow management packs because anything that is a network device or a port, like a Brocade switch, for example, used for fiber channel, I can have networking devices get visibility on that. And then any other type of switch type of interface, and I'm able to collect all those type of metrics that I usually am feeding off to some type of SNMP thing or something along those lines. Just a lot of power that's in the box. Again, in the box that you're entitled to leverage today. Pure Storage one, that is actually the one from Pure Storage. It's 3.4. Inner Site, that's actually the one from Cisco. I believe it's 1.0. So those are ones that, this is not just VMware or Broadcom management packs. These are management packs that are also provided by third-party vendors and such like that. which gives you this. If you're not using the troubleshooting VMs V3 or V4, but they're a little different from each other, dashboard that you download from brockpeterson.com or Brock's GitHub repo, I highly encourage it. Because when it comes to dashboards, this is my philosophy, is dashboards are this. One, does it already exist? Is it available out of the box? It's already inside the system. If the answer to that is no, did someone like Brock Peterson from brockpeterson.com, Dale Hassinger from vcrox.info, Cosmin Triff from what is it, Cosmin.gq, did someone already go and create a dashboard? Oh, great. Let me go download and load that in there. Only after those two criteria met do I go to number 3 of like, fine, I'll build a dashboard from scratch. How do I get started? Oh, Christopher has a video where Brock did an hour on building dashboards on the Architect's Edge on YouTube. So I would go to those places. That's just because I don't want to have to do any work, and I don't want you to do any work. I just want you to consume outcomes, right? Because then you get fun little stuff like that, full visibility. This is an example I give around like UCS. Honestly, any dashboard looks like this. If it looks like a bloody mess, click on that. If it's all green, move on. It's green, whatever. We spend our time looking at something else, doing something else, because if you haven't used the troubleshooting workbench, something that's been in the product since 8.4, so about 4 years now, it is absolutely powerful. And knowing how to use it appropriately can make the difference between taking you minutes to hours to taking seconds to minutes. So just a real lot of power in there. We talked a little bit about logs. The key part here is you want this to be more. Feed more log stuff. Wow, I've got VCF and Kubernetes and VPN, and I've got all these different type of log types loading there. And wow, I got 100,000 logs and like 10,000 of them are errors. Maybe I want to go look at that, right? Because that's kind of that highlight, like a repeat of from before, but FluentD, Cloud Proxies, Logstash, an agent collector, syslog forwarder. There's a lot of different ways to pull in that data. So go ahead, use that as like a really powerful thing to go and do the thing or what have you, right? Because that's, I've mentioned it before, but any OS, any application, even a container, I can actually go and look at the services running on there, visibility in the infrastructure, be able to do some of those things. The majority of what your agentless, some of those things can be agent-based, but we kind of get into that, right? So we talked about AI troubleshooting, remediation, right? Powerful type of thing, something to take advantage of. We definitely want to make sure we roll into the, okay. Show of hands, or feel free to scream out in the chat who used to use Skyline. As you guys know, last October we deprecated Skylines. I love it. I love the raised hands. So as for those of you who may not know, that is a lot of hands. Thank you guys. In 8.18, so July 2024, we released 8.18 and we introduced a functionality called diagnostics that I call Skyline diagnostics. So we introduced a lot of that Skyline functionality directly back into 8.18. So you're able to do some of those things. But wait, Christopher, what about log assist? Yeah, no, I know, man. We killed log assist because it was an API thing with the connecting thing to the back end if we were deprecating the VMware.com. So anyway, the point is log assist is back in 9, which I guess I mentioned in a few slides, right? So diagnostics as a general place for security advisory findings, all that kind of stuff. That's available in 8.18. Again, something you'll be able to do since July of last year. And it's something that we further reinvest into in 9 as well. Deeper diagnostics, deeper visibility, more power, and then plus log assist functionality coming back. I do want to touch, this is something I wouldn't normally talk about until the next week, but as you guys know, 9, or you may not know, unless you read my LinkedIn article on this, 9 has 2 licensing model, a connected licensing model or a disconnected licensing model. Spoilers for you guys for next week is log assist does require you to be connected in order for that part to function, which makes sense because you want to connect to the appropriate site ID for connection to all that type of stuff. But I just want to share that with you. If you don't like that, well, I mean, then you're in the world today without log assist. But if you want to take advantage of that, connected licensing provides you the log assist functionality inside of VCF 9. So a lot of cool juice there and power. So cost capacity, we talked about it before, right sizing, capacity planning, right? Okay. You guys remember in VROPS 8.17 and prior, and you may be running 8.18 and not be familiar with this, right? But in 8.17 and prior, we used to be like, hey, you should add 2 CPU to this workload. Hey, you should pull back 4 CPU from this VM or, 16 gig of memory. And then you're going to be like, well, why should I do that? And we'd be like, trust me, I know what I'm doing. Now in 8.18, so like a full year plus, we introduced a little carrot icon that tells you not only you should do this, here you should do this because the time remaining set upon the threshold of plus 30 days inside of this policy that's set with these particular values is what's giving us the recommendation to where you could go and click on the policy and go make those changes. So a lot of really powerful juice right there in the box you're able to just take advantage of. So super sweet. Because in the past I'd be like, why? I'd be like, oh, click the blue thing, go inside the VM. Let's go pull these individual key metrics, adjust the date frame. Let's go look at some stuff. And I will sometimes still do that. But also I could be like, yeah, show me history for the last 6 months. And then look at all that stuff. Oh, wow, everything I was about to go do was like a click. So I'm a huge fan of this investment alone. So that was one of the first things that came out of the Broadcom acquisition was making things like this reality that we've been wanting. This is the same reclaim capacity, an automation function that you've known about for 4+ years, but it's still amazing. You should always use it, reclaim those powered off VMs, reclaim those snapshots if you have them, definitely reclaim those orphan disks. For everybody, remember what an orphan disk is, right? An orphan disk by definition is when you go to delete a virtual machine, it says, yeah, hey, do you want to remove from inventory or do you want to delete from disk? So that's where the deviation of that, and it's like, oh, I'll just remove from inventory. But the real definition of an orphan disk is, hey, do you want to delete this from disk? And you're like, no, no, no. I'll clean that up later. An orphan disk that's later. And later is typically 500+ days, right? We found some that are 2,000 days old recently. Don't be that guy. But it's okay, right? Because that's what the orphan disk button there is. It's like, oh man, I forgot about later. So again, a lot of power. Again, all stuff you're able to take advantage of this moment. What if analysis dashboards? Oh my God. I've got some cool videos on this, and it's just so powerful. Take advantage of it, especially for workload planning. One of my favorite ways to do DR planning as well. So some really cool, sweet type of stuff we can do there around DR planning, consolidation, stuff like that. So a lot of really sweet things under the covers there. TCO, showback, chargeback, more, better. I will say if you like, oh man, I know where all of the cost dashboards are. I'm like, yeah, right? Because you go into dashboards and search for the word cost. Like, yeah. But I'm like, well, what about dashboard VM price? Oh, that doesn't have the word cost in it. Oh, you got me. What about like hardware depreciation? Oh man. So we have a number of cost related dashboards, but they don't have the word cost in their name. And that's why I'm a big fan of go inside the cost place and it shows all those cost related dashboards. It's a secret gimme that I've been using forever because it lets me find, oh, I forgot about that. Hardware deprecation. Oh man, that's extremely relevant, especially now with vSphere 9 going into support on October 2nd. Right? So just a lot of cool stuff there. And then, all right, this is a fun one. I'm a big fan of this one. Cost dashboards are all about cost, right? They should not be a place for you to be like, all right, this month it cost me like, let's say it's $100, right? And then that next month it cost me like $100. But then the following month cost me like $195. It shouldn't be a place for you to identify infrastructure changes or, I don't know, crypto miners running in your environment. But it has been the reality of I have used cost related dashboards in AWS. I've done it in Azure, but I've used this as a way to identify stuff that should not be going on and assets that were deployed that should not be running. Again, all through the lens of cost, powered by Excel, but this is not, but functionally and effectively, that's how most cost related things are. They're powered by Excel, right? Governance compliance, more, better, more power there, more regulatory hard. And okay, here's the thing. You're saying I don't have any regulatory guidance things I need to worry about. I'm not a bank. I'm not a hospital or what have you. So if you don't leverage any of the regulatory ones, you can still do SIS. You can DISA if you want to go hardcore. You can do ISO if you're international, right? So you can still do SIS or ISO, but in particular, you can do the vSphere security configuration guide. So rather than do all that stuff by hand, you can be like, hey, go and analyze all the stuff and show me where we're out of compliance with those particular things. And I can go enable or disable certain functions, stuff like that. But just a lot of power that happens to be fed inside there. And then drift detection introduced in 8.18 also, which again, it gets proved. But all that said, And I'm gonna add it's any questions that may have popped up that aren't being addressed. I mean, I see stuff. You guys are doing a great job. Let's talk about VCF9. We got 25 minutes and 24 minutes. Let's do this. So you guys know about VCF9. You've read all this stuff, right? Let's watch, explore. It's the smarter way to cloud. It's true, right? Modern cloud experience, secure, right? So here's some of the stuff, right? And we've heard this. We've heard this since last year, right? One interface for ops. Like, all right, I love it. One interface for ops. What does that really mean, right? Which we'll need to cover that in some of the demos. Not today, but in the next couple of weeks. One interface for consumption, right? I saw that question like, hey, vCloud Director integrated inside of VCFA. Like, yes, we'll get into that. One platform to run any VM, any container, any AI workload. I like that because it's got the AI. I should actually move that like bolded up there, right? A sovereign and secure platform. All right, we talk about that when I hit the vSphere slide, but you'll see what I mean by when we say sovereign and secure. And then cost control, right? So more, better cost drivers, a lot of power there. Because there's a couple different approaches here. You may be one of those holistic environments where you have app owners come to you and say, hey, I need a VM for thing. So at that point, you are both the build, deploy, operator. You're the provider, and you're like largely a consumer at the high level, right? But you may also have the, hey, I've got a provider infrastructure where I automate and operate all the stuff. I present out a service catalog to end users, or I present out a service catalog to myself that I then go fulfill based on end user requests. Because so you can do like I can provision stuff out to menu items to a developer, a platform engineer, an app owner, or something like that, or I just simply have them go through a form structure, and then I just go and fill out the stuff because I fully automate all the stuff in the back end. Whichever approach you have, the best part here is there's a lot of functionality, there's a lot of things you can take advantage of within this, right? So it's cool part there: streamline efficiency, accelerates deployment, rapid ROI, all this kind of power. But what this really means, and I kind of break this up into two buckets, is this is a unified platform for operations, comma, and automation. Wait, Christopher, I don't see a comma there, let alone an Oxford comma. Why did you say it that way? Because private cloud deployment, I got you, man. Resource management, governance, security, fleet management. Like, oh, sweet. That's ops, right? That's the provider infrastructure, right? Tenant management and governance, a la VCD, lab manager, like old school days, right? Application workflow orchestration, modern developer experience, VKS, supervisor, containers. That's my automation kind of pipeline. So that is kind of why the comma, because when it comes to this is ops. Ops as we know it today, right? VROPS was a thing, and if I wanted to go in today's world, in today's non-VCF9 world, I want to go and update something. Okay, all right, what do you want to update? I want to update a vSphere 7. Okay, sweet. You're like doing a pack file. You're uploading stuff to the command line. You're using LCM, right? That's what you're doing. You're doing VUM. That's what you're doing. I'm updating. But I'm updating something on 8. All right, cool. VUM, VLCM, probably. Oh, but wait. I'm actually no. It's not that. I'm updating VROPS or VRA or VRLI. I'm updating one of those things. Oh, okay. You're using VR LCM or ARIA Suite Lifecycle Manager. I'm using that type of thing. Oh, actually, I need to update a password or a certificate inside of my VCF fleet itself. Oh, okay, you're using SDC Manager. Like, damn, Christopher, it's a lot of different tools. And you're telling me I'm using like 7 tools? No. Yes, actually, today you are. Today you're using 7 independent separate tools to go and manage and update all this stuff. VCF9, right? Hey, I've got Fleet Manager, right? Fleet Manager for lifecycle. Strangely, this is an old picture, but still, it's the reality is I've got Fleet Manager. I can now use it to update my passwords. I can update my certificates and actually keep those things updated in real time. I can update my hosts. I can update my vSphere. I can update my VROPS, my Vera. I can deploy VIDB. I can not only install and I can not only update, but I can install and deploy those types of things. I can deploy VCF itself. Wait, you're saying I don't need Cloud Builder? I'm like, yeah, that's gone, right? So all these things, I had 7 plus tools. Yeah, because if I include Cloud Builder and some of the other ones, I had maybe a dozen different ways that were the only way to do certain functionality. And it's like, I got Ops for you. Ops is doing all that stuff now. Plus, obviously, being a powerful ops platform for many more pieces, right? So So much power there in the box, which we get into when we get into the weeds of some of the power stuff later here in a moment. All right, and fleet level operations, security management, some more juice in here that makes us more powerful and performant. So a lot of really cool sweet items here. All right, let's talk about automation a little bit. And John, I'm gonna pull you in earlier. I'm gonna pull in John earlier. John, you want to talk about automation in a moment while I take a drink? Oh, there's John.
Hey, what's up, Christopher? Been busy answering questions on the back end there.
You guys have been amazing. Yeah, talk about this one, and then I'll make you talk on slide 61 again as well.
All right. Yeah, so actually there have been a couple questions about this, specifically around VCD and where does that fall in? So this is a great slide to introduce that. The VMware Cloud Director product and vRealize Automation product are being combined and streamlined into a single product that's available with your VCF entitlement. So we're taking the best of both worlds there. The tenant management capability from VCD, the cloud governance capabilities from both products, and rolling those into to VCF automation. We call it VCFA for short. We can also provide a nice developer experience with this interface that enables us to either deploy through the GUI, or we can leverage APIs to allow developers to use a familiar interface to deploy VApps and those types of things. So it's all good, Christopher.
Oh man, and thank you for mentioning the API thing. That is, it may seem so subtle. It's like, oh, APIs. So there's a special distinction. I always make John remind me about the APIs, especially is because back in the day, and that day is today, right? If you're still running all these stuff independently, I want to go and do the thing. I want to do this stuff programmatically through an API. Like, oh, I love it. Totally. Go do that. Sweet. And you've got one API? Like, oh no. I've got so many APIs. You want to do something in ops? I got like 3 APIs for you to do the thing. Automation, like, oh, all bets are off, right? When it comes to trying to do all the stuff, and that's actually one of the real sweet parts around 9, is we started to unify the APIs. That's why some of these things, like some parts are an update, some parts are like an in place, some parts are, hey, I have to migrate over certain parts and stuff like that. And the key part of that is because we finally started to unify a lot of these things that were separate, independently managed APIs, some better than others. That was like a really, oh, finally, because there was just things I could not do, or things that was an onerous experience to try to accomplish. So the unification of API, and we get into like the unification of tags, asterisks. We'll talk in a moment here as well. Just a lot of really cool stuff in there. So what I like about that, I mentioned it before, right? Run any container, any VM, any native app, any AI workload. I get all that stuff, out of the box, all that. You're like, yeah, absolutely. And like, what does that do for me? Like, well, Christopher keeps saying sovereign, secure, compliant, but what does that really mean? Like, we're gonna, but with guardrails, consistency, and zero trust. Okay, so every slide you've been seeing me share at points, like this slide right here, this is backed by like 196 slide deck. When it's like, oh, I want to know more about this. Like, yeah, you do. And you're going to get into the depth and weeds on it. Like a lot of power. And like this slide itself, I could have Bob Plankers talk for 2 hours on. But he also has like 2 hours of additional slides to go on. So there's a lot of juice to kind of go in these things, which we'll get into. Right. We talked about cost transparency getting better show back, charge back. This is actually one of my favorite things is we used to have a number of different tools and products. VMware, back in the VMware days, like I had this thing like, oh my God, I love that thing. And like, sweet. Yeah, that's for telcos. Oh, I'm not a telco. All right, well, call back to me when you buy some towers and you start selling phones or something like that, because that functionality we only sell at telcos. So a lot of this functionality we used to sell only to separate buckets started getting rolled into VCF as a whole, which I absolutely love, because these were between our showback, chargeback, cost driver, visibility, billing, all that kind of infrastructure, a lot of these other dashboards, introspection of network stuff. We'll get into NSX later. All that power that we were doing kind of independently that was not unified and under the lens of how VCF is became part of that same family, which we'll kind of get in here, right? So it's part of that modernized, unified, secure. But what does that mean? Like, oh, well, I mean, like, maybe deployment pathways and infrastructure, private AI, security operations. No, Christopher, seriously, Like, can you give me an example? I mean, like performant fleet management and like advanced memory tuning and identity. Like, yeah, but what do you mean more specifically? I'm like, all right, okay. Let's talk about VCF 9 now, right? Let's talk about vSphere 9 specifically in this case. I love this because if you say, Christopher, there's like 300 slides about updates in vSphere 9. If you were to pick 6 of them, well, all right, I got you. I got you. I don't even have to create the slide. All right, so some of you guys may know about NVMe tiering, right? NVMe tiering we introduced in 8.03, right? So it's something you're able to do today. So NVMe tiering is a very simple base functionality you're able to take advantage of. And it's to say, hey, I got a terabyte of memory in my server, and memory is expensive, right? SD-RAM is expensive. I love to add additional memory. Can I just throw like an NVMe drive in there and expand? Like, I got you, dog. Again, I got you in 803 as well as in 9. So I call it the 1 to 4 and the 4 to 1 approach. So if I got a terabyte of memory, I can slap a 256 gig drive in there and say, you got 1.2 terabytes of memory now. Like, sweet, 1 to 4. But I can also be like, well, Christopher, what if I throw a 4 terabyte drive in there? Can I then allocate 5 terabytes out to my VMs? Like, yeah, yes, you can. And there's some really nice William Lamb logs on this as well. So a cool part in that is like, yeah, but I don't trust it. Like, what's it gonna move? NVMe tiering. I don't trust what you're gonna do. So NVMe tiering moves cold memory or specifically virtual machines that are not explicitly flagged as don't move to memory tiering, right? So it's like, I got this Oracle server. Okay, well, that wasn't gonna move there anyway, right? But what's an example of cold memory VMs? Well, if I go to right sizing, no, sorry. If I go to, actually I go to right size. I go to right sizing and it's like, hey, this thing's got 128 gig of RAM and I want you to reduce it to 64. But then I click the little greater than and it turns into a little symbol there. And I'm like, oh, actually, you should reduce it down to 4. I could reclaim like 124 gig of that, keep 4 gig as hot memory, and 124 gig goes off into this NVMe tier. Oh, but what if it gets hot? Okay, we move it back to SD-RAM because we don't. That's what we do, right? It's for cold memory, right? We don't leave hot memory inside of an NVMe tier, right? So that's really powerful thing. Again, something you can do today in 803, something you can do more better in 9. All right, I kept talking about. Actually, I'll talk about GPUs for a moment here. Sorry. I'll talk about, okay, this is really powerful for GPUs, right? Improved GPU visibility. And this, let me get my little annotation thing. Improved stun time. So in this scenario here, we had a VM, an AI workload that was running on one VM, and we moved it over to another VM in 8, right? 803. So I take this VM and I'm going to vMotion from one host to another. And obviously it's got a stun as part of that. So it stunned it. And this specific one, it stunned it for 222 seconds. And it's like, damn, all right, because it has to, right? So we took that same workload, we moved it into 9, and I'm like, all right, I'm at vMotion. You're like, hey, less than a second, man. And I'm like, sweet, right? But I'm gonna go and there you go. What I like about that is 9 also introduces more efficiency for vMotions, period. Not just for GPU workloads. GPU workloads, yes, more performant, more powerful. But if I got like a big database server, big SQL server, big big fat workload or something like that, it's also going to make that part more efficient, right? You guys know that when we move to 9, we go to image-based, VLCM leverages images at that point, right? But in addition to the image thing, we go from 1 image, as it is today, to an additional 4 images for a total of 5. Some people may be like, oh, I thought it said going from 1 to 4. That's why I called it out. It's plus 4 going up to 5, right? So this is when I talk about sovereign secure platform, this is a big one here, right? So about a month and a half ago, you may have seen we released it was a CVS 9.7 patch. There's a vulnerability. So we fixed it, we released this patch, yada, yada. And if you're on 7, we're like, all right, what do I do? Well, I got to evac the VMs. And then I got to, evac vMotion VMs. I got to put the host in maintenance mode, apply the patch, reboot. All right, and then bring it back online, exit maintenance mode, blah, 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 rinse, repeat. I'm doing that for 7. I'm doing that for 8. That same patch in 9.0.0.0.1.0.0, right? That one was like, yeah, just install. No evac, no vMotion. So wait, if I have 100 hosts running, I could just like patch 100 hosts, like patch the kernel. I'm like, yeah, So live patching was introduced in 8, but I don't know of any patches that apply to it for just VM kernel stuff, kind of. But in 9, VM kernel, VMX, NSX user space, a lot of power there. And virtual hardware 22, I always like to call that. Yes, it supports better TPM specs. It supports Windows Server 2025, up to 960 vCPU. But the reality of how I kind of position this is, chances are you may have some VMs out there still running hardware version 7, hardware version 11, hardware version 15. So anytime we have a hardware version or a VMware Tools update come out, of which we've had many recently, it should always remind you to go check the rest of your infrastructure. Because you may not be having a VM with 960 vCPU, but you may have an old VM that's not being efficiently run or operating inside the environment because it cannot address, chipset stuff and stuff like that because it's designed for hardware version 7 or hardware version 11, which is older. I find typically stuff that's a decade or 15 years old out there, usually doing like an old OVA or something like that. So a lot of power there inside of vSphere updates, right? Ops updates, more integration for all this stuff, more dashboards, better chargeback, showback. Fleet management is where the juice on all this stuff is. Tagging, oh my God. We've got like a unified tagging with NSX. No, okay. Unified tagging, not NSX yet, maybe 9.1 or later. So we've unified more tagging, right? You're like, wait, why are you telling me the truth then? Because I'm here to tell you the truth, right? Certificates, oh my God, check out our videos. John did some amazing demos on this on YouTube. We only have 8 minutes left, so we're not going to do any of that right now. But password management here and certificate management, where you can have it update the certificates. It actually updates it in the pipeline. And you could say, check a little radio button, keep it updated forever for your non-root level certs. So just a lot of power. And then we talked about using fleet management to go and update your VMs, your hosts, not your VMs, your hosts, the management infrastructure and all that kind of stuff. So a lot of juice that happens to be inside there. Storage, more, better cluster scenarios. Traffic isolation is a really sweet part. You can use it for vSAN. You can use it for other stuff as well. Improved file services. I'm going reverse on this. Improved file services. If you guys remember, we introduced SMB and NFS functionality in vSAN 7, which was related to vSphere 7. So it goes back a minute, right? We've had that functionality and it became more better. And if you saw it Explorer, we announced S3 functionality, more better as the time goes on. But this cluster-wide dedupe functionality, oh my God. So if you're using something like, oh, I got a storage array that has dedupe, I'm like, sweet. And it's like global dedupe, like, yeah. So you have like 2 like separate controllers and it's global among, well, that's not how that works, right? In this case, if I threw like a petabyte of storage inside of a single, vSAN slash, VMware HCI, VCF HCI infrastructure, I could actually have it be cluster-wide dedupe across that whole space. Something I may not necessarily experience some of my other, arrays themselves because they are limited within the addressable space inside of the chassis itself or something like those lines. So some really nice power that happens to exist in there, right? Networking, all right. Simplified VPCs, VPCs and Vera, which we're going to have John talk about here in a second. More of this stuff, but if I had one piece I wanted to talk about, it's explicitly enhanced data path. First introduced as part of VCF 5.1, originally introduced quite some time ago, super powerful, super performant, and now on by default in VCF 9, right? We introduced in 5.1, but available inside of, so VCF 9, NSX 9. And why I call this one out explicitly is you could have a VM running on the standard switch, distributed switch, or NSX switch that's living inside your virtual infrastructure, and then you take that one same operating workload today and you say now you're on an enhanced data path standard switch. I don't even have to do advanced. Like you could have tweaked the heck out of it and you're like, you know what, just switch it over to enhanced data path standard. Efficiency, increase packet per second, increase bandwidth, reduce CPU overhead because sometimes we got to send stuff up, increase performance, even though you did nothing but change it from a general type of thing, like maybe a Genevieve or something like that, to a DDPK, DPDK, whatever it is, the approach it's inside the white paper. All of that detail on there, so much power and juice real easily. John, I'll let you 30 seconds on automation here.
All right. So this is but thanks for the 30 seconds. This is focused on the supervisor control plane. And that control plane is something that allows us to deploy Kubernetes workloads directly on the ESX hosts. It also allows us to deploy VKS clusters or vSphere Kubernetes clusters upstream, and along with other services here. The cool thing about this is it's separated from vCenter today. So now we can deliver upstream Kubernetes releases 60 days after they're released to the community. And that gets us in line with all of the major providers of Kubernetes solutions. So this is the great news here.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much power and so many different integrations that we will not talk about at the moment. So we talked advanced services before, right? We talked about these ones like, hey, all that stuff, in addition to some Broadcom ones, right? Value Ops, Atomic, Network Observer. Like there's a lot of other Broadcom stuff outside the scope of just general the VMware VCF stuff. But hey, more, better private AI foundation. Wait, Hawk said we get that for free. Yes, you do when you adopt VCF 9. That's included in there. So that was a fun thing that was announced at Explore. Live recovery. Okay. So we won't go into depth on this, but immutable snapshots. That one of my favorite things around live recovery truly is the entropy analysis, or I'm able to identify likely when I was infected. So I can then roll back to a period that I know I was not infected versus, the general way it is today. It's like, let's figure it out, right? We'll go through our backups, right? Data Services Manager, a lot of power there if you run any open source databases, or you don't know you run open source databases, because we all run it, obviously, like Postgres is in our vCenter and stuff like that. So there's a lot of juice and power there. vDefend, oh my God, you guys known about DFW forever, but it's more, better. If enhanced data path and VPCs wasn't enough reason to adopt NSX, this, with a separate license piece, will take you to the next degree significantly and powerfully. So much juice and power that happens to be in here. Avi load balancer, again, the Avi that you've known and loved forever, more, better. And I was this is a, hey, by the numbers, right? That if there was 3 reasons to adopt VCF, right? vSAN, so hey, adopt vSAN, you get global dedupe and reduce TCO, right? Hey, yeah, like Christopher, sounds like marketing. Well, yeah, I mean, it's backed by those total economic impact studies, right? If I did NVMe storage tiering, right? That's something I can do in 8, but I can also do it. So NVMe memory tiering, I want to be clear. NVMe server consolidation memory tiering, right? It's something I'm able to take advantage of today as well. Hey, enhanced data path. Oh, sweet. Wait, if I'm already running VCF 5.1 today or later, I can just turn that feature on. Like, yes, you can, right? And in my last 2 minutes, I kind of get to this. This may look like, it's a marketing slide, Christopher. Like, yeah, if you adopt VCF compared to the traditional 3-tier model, you get savings on infrastructure, savings on facilities, saving all these types of savings, So again, total economic impact study, Forrester, blah, blah, all these papers. But like, what is a customer scenario is? And this is my favorite example. This is Broadcom. Wait, Christopher, VMware is Broadcom. Yes, VMware is Broadcom, but Broadcom is not VMware. So Broadcom they're not a software manufacturer who makes, VCF. Broadcom is a $1.5 trillion chip manufacturer who cannot tolerate downtime or outage or issues. So they're a big thing. Like, hey, we only use that which works well for us. And I call it the hair club for men effect, for those who remember that, is they liked VCF so much they bought the company, because from within 3 months, again, there's papers and videos and stuff on this that are all published. Within 3 months of adopting VCF, they reduced from 42, even though it says 41, because that's happened to 42 data centers down to 7. Significantly reduced provisioning time, reduced dev test time, the kind of dev test time that makes VCF have like 1 million hours worth of development hours in for this, for our like 2 million cores we run as infrastructure, all that stuff for a manufacturer who just happens to also have some software divisions. And then obviously consolidation, governance, stuff like that. So much power from a manufacturer's stance, who will only do that which makes sense for them. They will not adopt software if it's not going to work for them. And there you go. That's my thank you slide. You guys have been absolutely amazing. I don't know if we have, well, we're 10 seconds over. Hopefully, hey, there goes my head. Hopefully this was good. Hope you guys enjoyed this. And the next couple of weeks, the next few sessions, we'll also go deeper on a number of these topics as well. I know I said a lot of words. VMUG team, you want to come back and join us?
Great, Christopher. Thank you so much. Let me share my screen with you guys as we close out.
If you guys are not subscribed to my newsletter on LinkedIn, I highly encourage it. If we can drop the link for it, or otherwise I'll just find my name and add me, and you can easily find it that way as well.
Great. We have plenty of events going on. We have Explore on Tour September 16th in Mumbai. Have another one in London the day after. Our UserCon in Atlanta is not today. Apologies for the typo. It is actually tomorrow. So our UserCon in Atlanta is September 10th, not September 9th. And then we have one in Boston coming up on the 18th, as well as one in Dallas in October, and many more to come. Please stay up to date with our events. As mentioned at the beginning, this session was recorded. It will be distributed via email and uploaded to the VMUG channel on YouTube. So you will have access to this presentation. As soon as this presentation concludes, you will be prompted to fill out a survey. Please fill this out. This helps us provide fresh, relevant content for future webcasts. So please take a few minutes just to fill out that survey. And then lastly, for our VMUG Advantage membership, please use code COMMUNITY for 10% off a 1-year subscription. Thank you all for joining, and thank you to you, Chris, for an excellent presentation.
Thank you guys so much. I appreciate you guys being here.